Most people think that eating the right foods is the most important aspect of weight loss. And if you go online, you'll see people on all ends of the spectrum. Some people saying if you eat off chopping boards and you eat meat and fruit, you'll get into good shape. Or if you only eat plant-based food, you're going to be really healthy. Well, in this video, I'm going to prove to you with logic that all of this is bullshit, that you don't need to follow anything, and that following the approach that I suggest is going to make sure that your journey is seamless and happy. Look, I started my fitness journey in 2018. I was 125 kilos, obese, unfit, insecure, and since then I've completely transformed my life. I train twice a day now, I live in Bali, I'm happier than I've ever been, and so let's just get into it. All right, so the first thing that you need to understand is that the world consists of pendulums, okay? And pendulums is basically just an invisible energetic structure. These things exist because there are multiple people, and the more people that there are, the stronger the structure is. But there are multiple people that have similar thoughts, beliefs, or ideas, and they don't need to be physically together, but because they are having these similar thoughts and ideas, a pendulum is created. And this structure, the way that it operates is that it only wants to get more energy. So it wants to suck more energy from the system. And the energy could be for the pendulum or against the pendulum. This structure just wants more and more people thinking about it, okay? And so a good way to explain it is that in university, you had different societies, right? You had the finance society. Well, this is what it's like in the UK. I guess in the US might be frats. But you have Asian society. I'm just rattling off the societies that I had at my university. You might have had like physics society. And as part of all these societies, right, it would attract different people. And all of these people would have some commonality between the way that they think. So the Asian society, well, they all like samosas and kachori and sepuri and curry and all that shit. And then the finance society and the finance bros, they would like banking and asset management, and there can be an overlap. So there can be some people that are part of both societies. And the physics guys, they would like Newtonian physics and fucking quantum mechanics and all that kind of stuff. And there can be an overlap between people, and some people might be even part of all three. But these societies exist. Now, finance society itself is not a physical thing, but it exists because there are many people that have the similar thoughts of wanting to get into finance, the same desires, the same beliefs that finance is the way to get rich, perhaps. And as a result of these common beliefs, this energetic structure is created of the finance society, which is some entity that now multiple people congregate around metaphorically, okay? And this is basically how the world operates, right? Because although they're not called societies, we just have people thinking about different ideas. And so you could think about politics as a pendulum, cars, and then different car brands. So like Tesla's a pendulum. And then you have like religions. And so all of these are basically different pendulums. And what happens is one person has a thought, and that person then gathers more people around them that have the same thoughts and beliefs and desires and emotions. And as a result, the pendulum is created. And the thing is with the pendulum is that it doesn't have to have only people for the pendulum's ideas to exist. And so you could have people that believe in a religion, but also people that don't believe in the religion, and that adds to the energy of the pendulum, okay? So people that believe, and I'm going to explain how this relates to diets and food in a moment, but this foundational knowledge is really important about how the world works, right? Because once you understand this point, I think it makes it a lot easier to just see things a little bit more clearly. And so we have someone that thinks about maybe a religion, other people start gathering and start thinking the same thing, and then the energy of this pendulum becomes so strong that the original person that is thinking about this pendulum, if they stop thinking about it, the pendulum still exists. It kind of still continues to swing, right? Like a pendulum does. The reason why it's an energetic structure is because it loses attachment to any specific person, idea, or belief, right? It just exists because there's this collective thought energy and emotional energy that is surrounding the pendulum, okay? And as long as there's enough people that are giving their thought energy towards the pendulum, even if the original person that believes in the pendulum leaves, or that started the pendulum leaves, is still gonna exist in the same way. And like a good example of this is Apple company, right? Let me draw an apple. How do you draw an apple? Fuck it, that's the apple. So Apple. So Steve Jobs passed away. His thought energy, well, he didn't have any thoughts anymore, right? Passed away. So he can't think about Apple anymore. But because this pendulum of Apple has gathered so much energy from other people, whether you're for or against, to be fair, I'm an Android geezer. But because I'm not actually against Apple though, to be fair. But anyway, that's besides the point. Because there are people that still continue to think about Apple, it still exists as a pendulum because there's still energy surrounding this idea. And this is interesting because, I'm gonna rub all this shit off. So this is interesting because then we start to think about diets. And then we have maybe keto, we have carnivore, we have low sugar, we have Weight Watchers, we have plant-based. And in the same way that all the examples that I gave earlier, pendulums, all of these are energetic structures where multiple people who have similar thoughts and similar beliefs about the way to live life, and I'm going to explain why this actually is really important, gather together. And so this pendulum is created where now there's loads of people thinking about being plant-based. Even if the person that originally started thinking about being plant-based, it would still exist because there would be other people thinking about being plant-based. Now, the thing is with these pendulums, they're very strong. There's a lot of emotional energy surrounding them. And emotional energy carries a lot of information, okay? Because if you think about thoughts and emotions, thoughts are electric charges, emotions are magnetic charges. Emotions are just the chemical feedback of our experiences. And so because there's so much emotional energy around the diets, and I'm going to explain why this is the case in a moment, it carries a lot of frequency, a lot of information, okay? What I mean by frequency is that the electromagnetic field around these pendulums is very large, okay? From a metaphysical perspective. And the reason for this is because diets equal self-worth. And so like the keto guys and the carnivore guys are all about like discipline, performance, brain function. And so if you say, oh yeah, like I'm on keto, it's kind of like a badge of honor because you're doing it for these reasons of like being healthy, being disciplined, being performance orientated. And so people get passionate about that because they want to be seen as all these qualities, right? And that's what the emotional energy comes from. The vegans, the plant-based Donnies, well, they're morally superior, right? They're saving the world, they're saving the environment, they're saving the animals. And then there's the people that are low sugar. Well, again, they're like saying that they're healthy and they're not eating this poison. And then you have people, the intuitive eaters. That's like a slightly different diet. I'm gonna just write IE. And they're all about like freedom and fucking choice, right? And so all of this emotional energy means that people become very, very, very passionate. And a good example of this and why self-worth is like so emotionally impactful can be explained by a story. So one time I came back from a place called Thailand and I'd gained a little bit of weight. And at that time, my self-worth was very much tied to my fitness abilities. And my self-image was as well. And so what happened was, my mum was like, you got a bit big, I don't know what you done, mate. And I was like, oh shit. I took it really badly. Like I got quite defensive about it. I got really upset. And I remember that I felt disappointed, I felt frustrated, I felt guilty, like all of these emotions came up. And it's because the image that I had for myself didn't line up to the comment that was being made. And so there was this dissonance there. And so that created this emotional response. And this is what happens when people disagree with the thoughts and ideas of someone. So what happens is, right, someone says keto is the best diet. They've tied their self-worth to keto. Someone says that keto is not the best diet. Now someone is attacking the keto supporter's self-worth. What this creates is a lot of emotional energy. The emotional energy adds to the pendulum and the pendulum swings more. And so the content that is created around each of these pendulums, right, is also very polarizing and very strong and very powerful, because the people that are creating it are big supporters, because they have really tied their self-worth and their self-image to the diet and to what they eat. Now, this is really, really powerful when it comes to us consuming the content, okay? Because our weight, so like, say if we go on to search, okay, like, what is the best diet to lose weight? We're doing it because we want to lose weight, of course, right? And this is also a very emotional thing. Let me just put one again. Weight loss is very emotional. And so like, I'll give you an example of this. When I was growing up, I was about 12 years old and I went on holiday with my auntie and my uncle and my cousins. And I remember still to this day, we were walking in the street in Turkey, right? And there were like shops on the side, and it's like a touristy street, ice cream servers, and my auntie like turns over to me, and like, I think it was like pretty like British touristy place, lots of resorts kind of vibe, and obviously Brits quite overweight in general, especially in a place like that. And my auntie turns to me and she goes, I think you need to look after your weight, mate, because I was seeing all these guys here and they're quite big, and I don't want you to become like that. And so obviously she's seen that, she's like created this thought in her head that if I continue the way that I am, I'm going to become like them. And so she's vocalized that to me out of love. But then I just kind of take it quite personally. I'm like, oh fuck, there's something wrong with me. And it creates this negative emotional experience inside of me. I feel maybe a sense of lack of worthiness or whatever at the time. I obviously couldn't comprehend those feelings at the time, but that was what I felt. And the reason why I can remember it and articulate it so well to you now is because our negative experiences, or I should say experiences with a negative emotional charge, are very, very easily remembered, right? And this is proven in studies. So there's a guy called Haman, he did a study in 1999. He showed some people really positive photos, some people really negative photos. The people that were shown negative photos, he did brain scans on them using something called a functional MRI scanner. And basically it's like you put it through this brain scanner whilst you're showing these photos. And he found that the people that were shown negative photos had more amygdala activation than the positive photos. And what that means is that the amygdala in our brain is the part of our brain that's actually associated with the stress response. What is really happening is our negative experiences cause these negative emotions, negative thoughts. They're actually inducing more of a stress response. And because of that, we remember them more, because if you think about from a hunter-gatherer like environment, or when we were hunter-gathering in the evolutionary times, if there was a stressful experience and we wanted to avoid something was negative that happened, like a lion popping out or something, some sort of threat in the environment, we would want to have a higher amygdala response. We want to remember these threats more, because if we didn't remember the threats more, the next time the same thing would happen, then the emotional reaction wouldn't be high enough for us to escape, right? this would keep us surviving. And so, as we grow up, because of the accumulative effect of these negative experiences associated with our weight and these emotional charges, we have these strong desires to lose weight because we have these negative emotions and they cause us to desire losing weight. Now the thing is, and I'm going to share why this link backs to pendulums quite well, but the thing is, because of this strong desire, we also have three things. We want to be in control, okay? We want to be in control of our outcomes. And this is super important to understand, but like, if you think about, again, from an evolutionary perspective, if we could predict the weather, if we could predict predators, if we could predict other people trying to attack us, if we could predict like rival tribes, that would put us in a really good position. And so that's why our desire for control comes from. And that's why we would seek out to live in places of high altitude so we could see and control our environment more, right? If we didn't have this desire for control, we wouldn't do that and we wouldn't seek out the best place to settle, okay? And this can be seen and is the reason why Uber, for example, they installed the Uber map, which was revolutionary. But what they found was when Uber first started, they didn't have a map. People would order the cab, but they would be really annoyed because they couldn't actually know where the cab was, right? And so when Uber put in the map, they took away the uncertainty. Now, it wasn't about the length of the time that people were waiting. It was just because they didn't know, they were uncertain about the outcome, that they felt this negative emotion, right? And so we have this strong desire to be in control of our outcomes. Another thing that we have, and I'm going to explain how this relates to the pendulums in the beginning and how this affects our behavior in a moment, but we have a strong desire to be in control. Well, firstly, we have a strong desire to lose weight. Then we have a strong desire to be in control of the outcome of losing weight. We also are herd or are subject to herd behavior. So if we see a lot of other people doing something and getting the same results that we want, we will tend to gravitate towards that behavior. And again, this can be explained with evolutionary psychology, but like if there was a fire, right, in a tribe, and everyone else was running away from this fire, but you maybe couldn't see the fire, but like you were just in this settlement, people were running away from something, some sort of danger. Maybe it was a fire, maybe something else. It would make sense for you to continue, like to join them and start running, right? Now, if you didn't have a desire to follow the herd, some innate quality within you, then you wouldn't desire to run and you'd probably fucking die, okay? And so we have, at this point, a strong desire to lose weight. We want to be in control of our outcomes, and we have a desire to do what other people are doing. And then finally, we have a desire for simple solutions, okay? And like, let's say you wanted to cook a meal, okay? And you were like, I want to cook a pasta bolognese, spaghetti bolognese. And in the recipe, they had, you can either use spaghetti, or you can use whole wheat spaghetti, or you can use red lentil spaghetti, or you can use penne, or you can use this, or you can use that. And then in the options for the tomato sauce is like, you can use this, you can use that, and then you can use 5% meat, and it gave you all the options, right? It gave you everything. Now, at that point, okay, you would be like, I don't want to buy this cookbook because it's not actually telling me what I need, right? And so we have this desire to seek out simple solutions because it conserves energy. Like if we have a simple answer to a problem that we're facing, then it's easier for us to just apply that into our lives. And I'm going to explain why this can get us into a pickle in a moment, but this is the last thing that we're seeking for. So at this point, we have a desire to lose weight, which is really strong because of the emotional experiences that we've had around weight loss and our weight. As a result of that, we seek to control our outcome of losing weight. We try to follow what other people are doing, and we also seek out simple solutions, okay? And what happens is we have these pendulums that are created, and I'm going to write this here, that provide all of these as a solution for our weight loss problem, okay? And so if you think about like something like keto, what will happen is people will say, if you don't eat carbs, you will lose weight. So you have control. There's a lot of other people supporting it. And it's a pretty simple solution, right? So that ticks all your boxes and it allows you to lose weight in theory. And I'm going to explain in a minute in practice why it can be quite detrimental. But it ticks all these boxes. And so you're like, all right, I'm going to go and do keto. Especially when you see someone online that you admire spouting this advice, okay? And because of social media, it allows anyone to post pretty polarizing content, and people will push more polarizing content because it gets more traction and it gets more views and it gets more support, okay? So a fitness influencer that you admire, that maybe looks a little bit like you, that has inspired you, might start saying, only eat steak and eggs, okay? And they say this because it's a bit polarizing, it will gather traction, it will gather views, it creates this kind of cult-like mentality, and it creates a stronger pendulum because there's more control, it's simpler, there's more herd behavior because it's more polarizing, and it allows you to lose weight and get in shape. We see this online and we adopt this belief. Now, when I was younger, right, I used to look up to my brother quite a lot. I still look up to him, but in a different way. And I'll tell you a story, me and my cousins, so there's 4 of us, and we all had the same haircut as my older brother. It was like this Justin Bieber haircut. And that was the extent to which I adopted his beliefs, right? So I used to look up to him quite a lot. He was like the older brother, he was the golden boy, whatever. And like he would not like a film, and I would adopt that as my belief. He would not like a film, and I would like talk about the film to my friends and say that I didn't like the film if he said he didn't like the film, even though I might have actually liked it myself. But that's the extent to which we use role models to make decisions, right? Because in your head, right, we hear someone say online, do this. And like a good example is Alex Hormozy. He's a business guy online. He pushes the idea of doing 4 hours of work on advertising per day to get more people into your business. Now, for a very, very long time, I actually heard that in my head. Like he would be, whenever I sat down to work, I'd be like, I just need to do 4 hours. I just need to do 4 hours. And like his voice would be in my head. And so when someone that you admire, someone that you look up to, pushes some sort of thought, some sort of beliefs very strongly, we just then begin to adopt this belief. And with diets, it can be very easy to do this because of the emotional attachment to weight loss and our physiques, the desire for control, the herd behavior, because a lot of people get attached to it too, and because of the simple solutions that we're seeking. But now, this creates a really, really big problem, all right? And I'm gonna explain why. Because right now, we have a desire to be fit, and we have adopted the belief that keto, for example, is the method to get there. And we have said that we want to be like the person that we've seen online doing keto, so we're going to follow that, and that's going to allow us to get fit. What we don't realize is that people, when they're online, firstly, are just pushing the content that is polarizing, and because they want to get more traction and get more views, and they might not even be following the stuff that they're saying online, and they might only be sharing one side of it. And so when we actually can't stick to it, or it doesn't work for us, it creates something called cognitive dissonance. But basically what this is, right, is we get stressed because we have put pressure on ourselves based on what we've seen online, because it provides a simple solution, because it controls our outcome, because other people are doing it, because the person that we admire is pushing this content online. We feel like we should be doing it. When it doesn't work for us, when we can't stick to it, we get stressed because now we think that we won't see success on our journey, which we're emotionally attached to. And as a result of that, we actually put ourselves into a negative thought spiral, okay? And if you think about stress, right? Stress is a response to a threat in danger. And going back to evolution, if there was a hunter-gatherer and there were some threats going on, maybe a lion jumped out, we would need to feel stressed, right? We would need to have this fight or flight response. our heart rate goes up, our respiratory rate goes up, we start focusing on the worst case scenario, because if we focus on the worst case scenario and we prepare for it, we'd be most likely to escape it. The thing is, our thoughts can trigger the same response. And even worse, our thoughts can trigger the same response, and we then start to feel guilty and frustrated that we're not sticking to it. And we start to have similar thoughts as a result of the emotional responses that we're having. So you'll have a thought in your head. Now, what will happen is this emotional response will happen and we'll feel it in our body. There's different energy centers in our body, and the energy centers will release different hormones. So for example, you might feel guilt in your solar plexus area, and that will send a signal back to your brain and say, oh yeah, like you should think that again, or think more, send me more thoughts in a similar fashion so I continue to feel like this, right? Because it wants you to feel more emotion to get rid of the threat in the environment, okay? Because it helps you survive. Now, the problem with this is that we get focused on the worst case scenario, okay? And so we accentuate the extent of the problem. And so we say, oh, like if we don't stick to this keto diet, we're not gonna get the outcome that we want. And so we berate ourselves, we get even more stressed. And the problem is that this creates a level of mind. This creates a neural pathway in our brain which has fired together so regularly that it creates an image of ourselves in the frontal lobe, which is the front of the brain. And so now we say to ourselves, okay, like we're stressed because we haven't stuck to what we said what we should do, and we're not disciplined, or we're not the person that we should be being. And so this creates this cycle of like feeling guilty, feeling frustrated, and it gets easier to feel this way. And then as a result of that, we actually do more harm than good. And there are two reasons for this. One is because physiologically, when you're in a stress state, your body's not functioning properly. Like when you go into fight or flight, when you're in this stress state, when you're in this pressurized state, your body can't function properly. Like imagine a school, everyone's in their class, everything's functioning normally, everyone's learning, everything's in a happy place. That's your body when it's functioning normally. Then the stressful things happening, it's like the fire alarm going off, ding, 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 ding. Everyone gets sent outside, everything gets put to a halt. Now, if you are constantly triggering that because we're feeling guilty, we're feeling frustrated because we're not doing what we think that we should be doing based on some idea that we've got from a pendulum online, based on what some polarizing character has said because they want to get more views, then we're going to get into a lot of issues, right? Physiologically, our digestion might not work properly, our metabolism might not work properly, our muscle recovery might not work properly because we're constantly stressed. But also, when you're stressed, we start focusing on things. Things are an environment. We start predicting on the worst case scenario. So we start looking at the scale more, we start looking at calories more, we start looking at the things that don't really matter. And what happens is, the more that we feel this response, the more easily it's triggered. And so the body, even if what we're actually doing is not that bad, we still get the feelings that it is, okay? And that's where this perpetual cycle of guilt, frustration, and lack comes from. And so a better approach and a way more powerful approach when it comes to weight loss is to adopt something called the experimental detached mindset. And what I mean by this is that you don't attach to any people, detached from, I'm just gonna write here actually, detached from ideas and people, but open to trying, okay? So like say if someone says online, some fitness influencer, now you're not gonna attach to the idea of maybe doing keto. You're not gonna attach to the person saying it, because when you get attached, you get stressed. And when you get stressed, you don't lose weight. So if someone online says they're doing keto, just because they've said it doesn't mean it's the right way for you. And we need to internalize this mentality, because if we start attaching to what other people are saying and taking it as gospel, and then we try it for ourselves and it doesn't work, then and we're still attached to their ideas, we're gonna feel stressed and we're gonna feel pressure, and that's gonna do us more harm than good, okay? We're also gonna be open to trying. So if someone else that you don't always agree with still says something that could be a good idea, we can actually be open to trying it. And as a result of this, we basically just keep testing things like a scientist, all right? And so we create a hypothesis, and the hypothesis could be, and I did this recently with myself, so I tried keto recently, but it could be like keto is going to help my cognitive function. I'll tell you a story. So last week I tried keto, and what keto is, if you don't know, is you just cut out carbs. The reason why I did it is because I saw a few people online, Stephen Bartlett in his latest vlog, he was like, yeah, I do keto 6 to 8 weeks a year to like reset my diet, reset my thing. And then I watched a podcast on ketogenic diet, and it was about how like brain function and cognitive function is better. Now, I like carbs, I like rice, I like sweet potato, I like potatoes. But I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be open about it, but I'm not gonna attach to the idea just because they've said it. So I tried keto, and what happened was I lost a lot of water. And I didn't do my research, this is completely my fault. I didn't do my research, and I lost a lot of water because 1 gram of carbohydrate holds 3 grams of water. And so I lost a lot of water, and what happened was, as a result of losing the water, I lost a lot of electrolytes. Now, I'm also training pretty hard here in Bali, so I'm sweating a lot, I'm training twice a day. And so that, coupled with the ketogenic diet, I lost a lot of electrolytes. And so I was like really imbalanced, and I was having quite bad heart palpitations at night. And it did way more harm than good by going on that for me. Now, I tested the hypothesis of doing keto, and I came to the conclusion that at the moment, it's not the best thing for me to be trying, just because I would have to change my electrolytes, and honestly, I can't be asked to think about it right now. However, it's something that I might try in the future. And so that was the conclusion, and I did it in a completely detached way. Now, if I stayed attached to being keto and I said, I need to do it to improve my brain function, then I would create more stress in my brain, because then I would be in a position where I would be trying to do keto, my electrolyte balance would be fucked, and at the same time, my body would also not be responding well, right? And so even though for other people that I admire or am inspired by, it works for them, for me it doesn't. And so if I was attached to them or the ideas, it would have been detrimental to the experience that I'm having literally right now. And so this is why it's important to continually and consistently create hypotheses based on what you see online and run experiments. And as you do that, right, you get closer and closer to your own truth, which is all what we're trying to do, right? We're just trying to get to truth. And when you get to truth, it basically is the system that works for you, for your own goals, for what you'd like to achieve, which makes you feel good, because all our bodies are completely different, right? All our bodies are metabolizing food differently. Our brains are going to function differently. I'm sure that there's some people out there that work really well on carbohydrates, right? I don't feel like my brain isn't that functioning well on, fuck, I fucked up that sentence though. But I don't feel like my brain doesn't function well when I eat carbs. But maybe when I try keto again, I'll be disproved if I can stick it out a bit longer, right? But as we experiment like a scientist, detached from ideas and people and open to trying things, we get closer and closer to truth, which is the best possible solution for us and our goals and what we would like to achieve and the way that we want to live life. And that makes us the happiest ever. So if you enjoy this video, and you'd like to work with me to transform your life over the next 90 days, mentally, physically, and spiritually, then click the link in the description and all the instructions are there. But other than that, remember, you are the person that you want to be. Peace.